Welcome back to the cosmic soap opera that makes reality TV look like a documentary about library science. I'm still here, still looking like I was sketched by someone having divine visions. And if you missed part one, pause this video right now and go watch it. Because we covered the main Olympian family, and you need that context for the absolute chaos we're about to unleash. For everyone who survived learning about Zeus's transformation collection, Hera's revenge masterpieces, and why Athena probably needs anger management, congratulations! Your brain is now properly prepared for the extended universe of Greek mythological dysfunction. You thought the main 12 gods were messy? Oh, sweet summer child. We haven't even started talking about the supporting cast that makes the Olympians look emotionally stable. So grab your ambrosia, buckle up for the extended family reunion from hell, and prepare to meet gods who make Zeus look like a relationship counselor, and entities that make Hera seem forgiving. This is part two of the most dysfunctional divine family ever imagined. And trust me, you're not prepared for this level of mythological madness. Now let's talk about the male gods who aren't part of the big three, starting with Apollo, the golden boy of Olympus, who's basically the divine equivalent of that guy in college who was good at everything and definitely knew it. Apollo is the god of music, poetry, healing, prophecy, and the sun, which is like being the valedictorian, star quarterback, class president, and prom king all at once. He drives the sun chariot across the sky every day, which sounds like an awesome job until you realize it means he can never sleep in or call in sick. Apollo is ridiculously handsome, incredibly talented, and absolutely aware of both facts, making him simultaneously inspiring and insufferable. He's the patron of the arts, which means he's responsible for every beautiful song, poem, and sculpture ever created, but also every pretentious artist who thinks their talent makes them better than everyone else. He established the oracle at Delphi, giving humans access to divine prophecy, but the prophecies are always cryptically worded, because Apollo apparently thinks straightforward communication is beneath him. His love life is a masterclass in how not to conduct relationships. He falls in love constantly, pursues relentlessly, and gets rejected spectacularly. His most famous rejection came from Daphne, a nymph who literally turned herself into a tree rather than date him. A tree! Imagine being so overwhelming in your romantic approach that someone chooses permanent photosynthesis over dinner and a movie with you. Apollo's response was to make laurel wreaths sacred to him, which is either romantic devotion or the ancient equivalent of keeping your ex's hoodie forever. Then there's Cassandra, who agreed to sleep with Apollo in exchange for the gift of prophecy, then changed her mind at the last minute. Apollo couldn't take back the gift, so he cursed her to always tell the truth about the future but never be believed. He created the world's most frustrated fortune teller out of spite, proving that even gods of wisdom and prophecy can be petty when they're sexually rejected. Apollo also has a dark side as the god of plague. When he's angry, he shoots disease arrows from his silver bow, causing widespread death and suffering. The same god who brings healing music and beautiful poetry can also bring devastating illness, making him the ancient equivalent of a really moody artist who alternates between creating masterpieces and destroying everything around them. Ares is the god of war, specifically the chaotic, brutal, senseless violence kind of war that leaves everyone wondering what they were even fighting about. While Athena represents strategic warfare and honorable combat, Ares embodies pure bloodlust, rage, and the kind of fighting that escalates from a minor disagreement to total destruction. He's not particularly clever, not especially strategic, and definitely not someone you'd invite to a dinner party unless you enjoy having all your furniture destroyed. The Greeks didn't actually like Ares very much, which is unusual for a warrior culture. They saw him as necessary but distasteful. You need the capacity for violence sometimes, but you don't have to celebrate it. Ares represents the worst aspects of conflict: the mindless destruction, the loss of humanity in combat, and the way violence can become an end in itself rather than a means to achieve something worthwhile. He's accompanied everywhere by his sons Phobos, fear, and Deimos, panic, plus various spirits of violence, carnage, and battlefield confusion. His entourage is basically a traveling horror show that turns every conflict into a traumatic nightmare for everyone involved. When Ares shows up to a battle, it stops being about who's right and becomes about who can survive the ensuing chaos. His affair with Aphrodite makes perfect psychological sense. Love and war have always been intimately connected. Passion and violence often feed off each other, and both are forces that can completely override rational thinking. When Hephaestus caught them in his invisible net, the other gods laughed at Ares more than Aphrodite, which probably didn't help his already substantial inferiority complex. Hephaestus is the god of fire, metalworking, and being criminally underrated by everyone around him. He's the divine craftsman who creates all the gods' weapons, magical items, and technological marvels, making him the most practically useful member of the pantheon. He made Zeus's lightning bolts, Poseidon's trident, Athena's aegis, and countless other legendary items that enable the other gods to do their flashy, heroic deeds. Hephaestus was born with physical disabilities that made him an outcast in the shallow world of Olympic beauty standards. Hera was so disgusted by his appearance that she threw him off Mount Olympus, breaking his legs and giving him a permanent limp. He was raised by sea nymphs and learned his incredible crafting skills in exile, which explains both his remarkable talent and his deep-seated trust issues with family. Despite being married to Aphrodite in what's obviously a political arrangement designed to prevent the other gods from fighting over her, Hephaestus is surprisingly philosophical about her affairs. He's got his work, his forge, his creations, and he seems to understand that trying to control the goddess of love is like trying to forge water. When he does seek revenge, it's through clever traps and public embarrassment rather than violence, proving that intelligence and creativity beat brute force every time. Hephaestus represents the dignity of skilled labor and the satisfaction that comes from creating something beautiful and useful with your own hands. He's the patron of craftspeople, engineers, artists, and anyone who finds meaning in making things rather than just talking about them. His workshops are described as marvels of automation, with golden servants helping him work, making him the ancient world's greatest inventor and manufacturer. Hermes is the messenger god, the god of thieves, travelers, commerce, and how did I end up being responsible for this mess? He's Zeus's son and his personal problem solver, which means he spends most of his time cleaning up his father's mistakes and delivering awkward messages to people who definitely don't want to hear them. He's got winged sandals that let him fly anywhere instantly, a magic staff called a caduceus that can induce sleep or wakefulness, and the supernatural ability to talk his way out of any situation. Hermes is the divine trickster, pulling pranks and causing mischief wherever he goes, but always with a purpose behind the chaos. On the day he was born, he stole Apollo's cattle, invented the lyre from a tortoise shell, and convinced everyone he was innocent despite overwhelming evidence to the contrary. He's the god of boundaries and boundary crossing, which makes him the patron of everyone who lives on the edges of society. Merchants, diplomats, thieves, and anyone else who needs to navigate between different worlds. But Hermes isn't just a prankster. He's also the psychopomp, the guide who escorts souls to the afterlife. He's one of the few gods who can freely travel between the mortal world, Olympus, and the underworld, making him the ultimate intermediary. He's present at births and deaths, beginnings and endings, transitions and transformations. He represents communication, change, and the liminal spaces between different states of being. Hermes embodies the principle that information is power and that the ability to communicate effectively across different groups is one of the most valuable skills in existence. He's the patron of negotiators, translators, salespeople, and anyone whose job involves bringing different parties together to reach an understanding. Dionysus is the god of wine, madness, theater, and let's see what happens when we completely abandon our inhibitions. He's the newest member of the Olympian family and has the most unusual birth story. He was born from Zeus's thigh after his mother Semele was killed by Hera's jealousy. Zeus rescued the unborn child and sewed him into his own leg until he was ready to be born, giving Dionysus the distinction of being literally twice born and making Zeus the only male god to experience pregnancy. Dionysus travels the world with an entourage of satyrs, maenads, and various spirits of wilderness and intoxication, spreading the cultivation of wine and the art of losing your social conditioning. His festivals were basically ancient raves where people would drink, dance, perform theater, and temporarily abandon all social conventions. He represents the human need for ecstasy, transcendence, and the occasional complete break from the constraints of civilized life. But Dionysus has a genuinely dark side: madness. The line between divine ecstasy and dangerous insanity is razor thin in his worship, and people who reject him or try to suppress his influence often end up literally mad. King Lycurgus tried to ban wine and ended up killing his own son in a frenzy, thinking he was pruning a grapevine. King Pentheus spied on the Dionysiac rites and was torn apart by the frenzied worshippers, including his own mother, who didn't recognize him in her divine madness. Dionysus represents the idea that you can't indefinitely suppress the wild, irrational aspects of human nature without serious psychological consequences. He's the god of letting go, of controlled chaos, of the moments when you stop overthinking and just experience life fully. But he's also a reminder that there's always a price for transcendence, and that the forces that liberate us can also destroy us if we're not careful. Now let's talk about the extended divine family, the supporting gods who might not be Olympians, but are absolutely essential to understanding how this cosmic dysfunction really works. First up, we have Hecate, the goddess of magic, crossroads, and things that go bump in the night. She's often depicted with three faces or three bodies, allowing her to see past, present, and future simultaneously, which must make conversations really complicated, but gives her incredible strategic advantages. Hecate is the patron of witches, necromancers, and anyone who works with the darker aspects of magic. She teaches spell casting to mortals, guides travelers through dangerous nighttime journeys, and helps with childbirth and healing. But she's also associated with ghosts, curses, and the kind of magic that comes with serious moral complications. She represents the liminal spaces, the boundaries between life and death, light and darkness, knowledge and mystery. Ancient people would leave food offerings for her at three-way crossroads, asking for protection during travel or guidance in making difficult decisions. She's the goddess you pray to when you're facing a choice that will fundamentally change your life, or when you need to navigate situations that conventional wisdom can't help with. Modern practitioners of witchcraft and paganism often honor her as a patron goddess, and she appears in countless fantasy novels and occult practices as the ultimate magical mentor. Pan is the god of the wild, shepherds, and everything untamed in nature that civilization tries to pretend doesn't exist. He's half goat, half man, with horns, hooves, and an insatiable appetite for both food and sex. He spends his time in the wilderness playing his reed pipes, chasing nymphs with mixed success, and generally embodying everything that civilized society tries to suppress about human nature. Pan is where we get the word panic, the sudden irrational fear that strikes people when they're alone in wild places and sense something watching them. He represents the part of human consciousness that remembers we're animals, that recognizes the power and danger of the natural world, and that needs wildness and freedom to remain psychologically healthy. Pan's music has magical properties. It can inspire divine madness, sexual frenzy, or transcendent joy depending on what tune he chooses to play. He's the patron of musicians who create music that bypasses rational thought and speaks directly to the body and emotions. But he's also a reminder that the forces of nature are fundamentally beyond human control, and that our civilized identities are much more fragile than we like to admit. The Muses are 9 sisters who inspire art, literature, science, and every form of human creativity. They're the daughters of Zeus and Mnemosyne, memory, which makes perfect psychological sense. Creativity comes from combining divine inspiration with the ability to remember and build upon what came before. Each muse specializes in a different domain. Calliope handles epic poetry, Clio manages history, Euterpe covers music, Melpomene does tragedy, Terpsichore manages dance, Erato specializes in love poetry, Polyhymnia covers hymns and sacred music, Euronia handles astronomy and mathematics, and Thalia takes care of comedy. The muses represent the mysterious process by which technical skill transforms into true art, the moment when craft becomes transcendent and speaks to something deeper in the human experience. Artists throughout history have invoked them for inspiration, and the concept survives today in our idea of a muse. Someone or something that sparks creativity and helps artists access their deepest talents. But the muses aren't just passive inspirers, they're also judges of artistic quality and can be quite harsh with those who disrespect the arts. They once competed with the 9 daughters of King Pyrrhus in a singing contest, and when the mortals lost, the muses turned them into chattering magpies as punishment for their hubris. The Fates are 3 sisters who control destiny itself, making them more powerful than the gods themselves. Clotho spins the thread of each person's life. Lachesis measures its length and determines what will happen during that lifetime. And Atropos cuts the thread when it's time for death. Even Zeus can't override their decisions, which establishes the philosophical principle that there are some aspects of existence that transcend even divine power. The Fates represent the ultimate limits on both human and divine agency. The idea that while we can make choices about how to live our lives, the fundamental parameters of our existence are determined by forces beyond our control. They appear at crucial moments in myth to remind heroes and gods alike that no one escapes their destiny, though how you meet that destiny is still up to you. They're often depicted as sharing one eye and one tooth between them, which creates interesting logistical challenges, but symbolizes their unity of purpose and their ability to see the bigger picture that individual mortals and gods cannot perceive. Nemesis is the goddess of vengeance and divine retribution, ensuring that people who get too arrogant or successful receive appropriate comeuppance. She's not randomly cruel. She specifically targets those who have committed hubris, the excessive pride that leads people to think they're above natural law or divine authority. She represents the universal principle that what goes up must come down, and that extreme good fortune often precedes extreme reversal. Nemesis is particularly focused on punishing those who have gained their success through injustice or who have used their advantages to harm others. She's the cosmic force that ensures bullies eventually get their comeuppance, that corrupt leaders face consequences for their actions, and that people who think they're untouchable discover they're not. Her symbols are the sword and scales, representing justice and balance, but also wings, representing the swift and often unexpected nature of divine retribution. She's the goddess people pray to when they've been wronged by someone more powerful than themselves, and the deity that explains why powerful people often become paranoid about losing what they have. Iris is the goddess of the rainbow and the messenger of the gods, particularly for Hera. While Hermes handles most divine communication, Iris specializes in messages between the gods themselves, especially when those messages involve delicate diplomatic situations or feminine perspectives. She represents the beauty that can emerge from the interaction between different elements, light and water creating something magnificent that neither could produce alone. Iris travels by rainbow, which is both practical for a messenger and absolutely gorgeous to watch. She's often depicted with golden wings and a pitcher of water from the river Styx, which she uses to make gods swear binding oaths. When a god swears by the water of Styx and breaks that oath, they lose their voice for a year and are banished from divine society for 9 years. Iris is basically the notary public of Olympus, ensuring that divine contracts are properly witnessed and enforced. And that was all for this exploration of Greek gods' world. If you want more video about me analyzing Greek mythology in the worst way possible, please subscribe. See you next time.